What's up, guys, and welcome to a new era of theme park simulation. This is Planet Coaster Console Edition. Now, over the course of the next 11 episodes, I'm going to be letting you guys know about every single thing there is to know about this new title. So for this first episode, we're going to be mainly focusing on just getting familiar with Planet Coaster. Now, right above my head here, there's going to be a little card. You can click that to move on to the next episode where we're going to learn more about park management and all things that have to do with managing your park and trying to make the most amount of money as possible. Now let's try to familiarize ourselves with Planet Coaster just a little bit. The first thing I'm going to touch on is the age-old debate, keyboard and mouse versus a controller. While this game is obviously the console edition, you do have the option in the settings to choose between controller or keyboard and mouse settings. Now, if you are a person like myself who is coming from the PC or Steam version of Planet Coaster and you're more comfortable with keyboard and mouse, I highly recommend you plug in a keyboard and or a wireless mouse or whatever you have into your Xbox to get the best possible experience. But if you aren't new to console and you haven't played any PC version of any game, really, I think you'll find the controls in this one very, very comfortable and very familiar to other tycoon-style games. And with that said, let's actually continue through the settings. Now, I'm going to give you guys a little rundown here of the volume settings. This is a very, very important thing that I think a lot of people overlook, especially if you are recording gameplay. Now, these settings right here, this is what I normally use. I usually tone the master volume down to 50% and then adjust it in my recording software so it's not peaking and it sounds just ambient enough to be okay. Now, as for the soundtrack, this game obviously has a phenomenal soundtrack. It is one of the most peaceful and just greatest soundtracks of all time. I normally dial that back to 25%. just so it's not super overpowering for your commentary if you are going to make content on this game. Everything else is typically kept at about 75%, seems to be the sweet spot. Now moving over to controls, this is sort of where you can dial in your controller sensitivity. I don't really see a need to increase it, but then again, I'm more of a keyboard and mouse type of dude, so this one is totally up to you guys. The next one over, of course, would be the keyboard and mouse settings. I am, for the sake of this being a console game, I am going to be using a controller, so don't hate on me too much in the comments. Now, display settings, this is where you set your screen up, especially for the safe frame. This can be a sort of make it or break it type of thing, so I'm using a 55-inch TV as my monitor, as my computer monitor. When I'm recording this, I do have to actually scale it up for whatever reason, so normally it would look something like this. Now, for whatever reason, my capture card like shrinks this all down, so I've just left it maxed out and that seems to work fine for me. Next, we have the interface options. This is where you can change the interface colors, kind of choose whatever you want. There's also colorblind heat maps. You can choose whether or not you want to show the park boundary. I recommend you leave it on, as when you're building a coaster and you start to run to the outskirts of the park, it can be a very, very tight squeeze sometimes to make certain turns work. As for the interface scale, this is totally, once again, up to you guys. I like to keep this one about 80% so it doesn't take up a good majority of the screen. If you were to leave it on 100%, you can see it's very, very big. Now, that may help some of you who are further away from your screen, so just kind of do with that what you will. This is where you can change your distance units as well as your speed unit. So being from North America, I like to set mine up for feet as well as miles per hour, just because that's what I'm familiar with. Moving on to the global game settings, you can choose to turn on or off your reputation. And what this is going to do is greatly affect your prestige of your rides over time. So if you don't want your rides to age, probably should turn off reputation. If you do want them to age, once they reach that classic status, keep in mind they do very, very well. So I recommend leaving it on, but it's totally up to you. Most of this is totally up to you. I'm just trying to walk you guys through how to set it up. But this part right here, this part is something I definitely didn't expect. I was thinking that the collisions system is something they would leave out of the console edition, as sometimes, yes, it does kind of cause some issues. But apparently, and from my testing, it seems like it doesn't really slow down the Xbox. Now, I don't have the new Xbox Series X. I just have a Xbox One X, I think. I don't know. There's too many Xboxes out there now. But if you do leave these options on, you're able to do quite a lot more with your scenery, with your coasters, regarding their collisions, whether or not they're going to be able to go through certain things or the terrain or whatever it may be. I haven't noticed any game crashing issues having these turned on. So super happy that Frontier decided to leave those settings in the console edition, as it will greatly improve some of the creations you're going to be able to make on here. Next, we have building settings. You can choose to change those if you want. I never do. Crash test dummies are always on, because it's probably best you test out your rides with some dummies and not actual people. However, if you do set this to off, actual people will not be testing your rides. Don't get too excited. It's just gonna be an empty ride. So leave it on, it's cooler that way. This last tab here is actually a new thing that I've never seen before in the PC version. It seems like this isn't necessarily a running tutorial that you can have. It's more of a way for you to know that, hey, my park is doing well. I'm meeting these expectations of Oswald B. Thompson and Eugene Newton, who I'm sure we'll learn more about as time goes by. But it might be more of a tip type of alert system, I'm thinking. But that does it for the settings. Let's move on to helping you guys choose which game option, or game mode I should say, is right for you. So starting with the career mode, this one's definitely good for people who are new to Planet Coaster. The first one here is going to be the tutorial. The next one is going to be your beginner career. So what this does is basically drops you into an already pre-built, pre-made park, and your job is to do the very best you can to try to manage everything, add a couple of new things here, maybe take some old stuff that's not doing so well out. And there are a bunch of challenges and trials and all that type of good stuff to really keep you on your toes. And this is a very good game mode to play if you want to stay more engaged with your game. You don't necessarily want a sort of free play, free mode type of thing, if you catch my drift. The next one is sandbox mode. Talking about the free play, free mode, this is basically an all-you-can-eat buffet. If you want to do whatever you want, create whatever you want, wherever you want, however you want, sandbox mode is the mode for you. You have a plethora of options to choose from here. This is going to be your biome of your park, so where your park is located. You can choose a city, you can choose the Alpines, grassland, desert, deciduous, Arctic, tropical, my personal favorite. You guys know that. If you're not new to the channel, you know that. If you are new, make sure you stick around a while. Consider subscribing. It'd be greatly appreciated. And when you start a sandbox park, it is a completely blank slate. You have your entrance path with a ticket booth, and that is it. Everything else is up to you on how you want to sculpt the terrain, on how you want your guests to feel as soon as they enter the park. That is completely up to you. But now let's move on to the last game mode here, which is the challenge mode. Now what challenge mode is essentially a combination of two other game modes, one being career mode, the other being sandbox. So from what I understand, you do still start with a blank slate for the most part, except unlike sandbox mode, you don't have unlimited money. You start with a very limited amount. You can choose whether you want easy, medium, hard mode, and that will greatly affect the amount of money that you start with. However, again, unlike the sandbox mode, you won't have a whole lot of stuff unlocked. You will have to do a lot more R&D, that's research and development, to try to unlock certain things, certain rides, certain facilities to be able to push your park to the next level. Now, this is the one that I normally play. I thoroughly enjoy it. Sandbox can get a little boring because you don't really have any constraints. Challenge mode is definitely where it's at, in my opinion. And tropical biome. Always tropical biome. It never fails. Now, the next pretty big thing, I would say this is a very big feat for Frontier to be able to accomplish. This is the Frontier Workshop down here in the bottom right. With the Steam version of the game, or the PC version of the game, we had what's known as the Steam Workshop, which is a place where anyone with the game that made creations could upload them to the cloud, I guess you could call it, and anyone else would be able to download those creations and put them in their park. Now, what Frontier has done here is completely disregarded the Steam Workshop, mainly because Steam is not involved in the console universe at all. So they've created their own workshop. I'm not sure on the details of how they've done this, but we'll go ahead and launch it open right here. So as you can tell, since I am in early access, I don't believe anyone actually has permission to upload anything to the Frontier Workshop just yet, but I can guarantee you after today, November 10th, after today, probably the 11th, there will be a bunch of creations for you guys to download from here. Now, to get into the Frontier Workshop, you do have to create a username that you want to go by, and it also sort of gives you your own profile. So of course I'm GWG, that's Toogii. Dub is my middle name, don't worry about that too much. But on this, you can see you can upload a creation, you can go through your uploads, you can go through your subscriptions, your favorites of other people's creations that you've liked. The Browse tab is of course where you can browse through coasters, track rides, park, anything anyone has ever created and they put up on the workshop, you'll be able to download it from here. Now it looks like I have 1,000 megabytes worth of disk space allocated to Planet Coaster Console Edition. I don't know if that's going to vary for other people or not. I suppose it does depend on how much space you have on your console, but I'm sure you could probably allocate a separate hard drive or something to it, so maybe you can get a little bit more space that way. But that does it for the Frontier Workshop. It's gonna be really hard for me to call it the Frontier Workshop and not the Steam Workshop, just because that's what I'm so used to saying. But that is where we're going to wind down this first video of Planet Coaster Console Edition. So if you guys want to see more, make sure you continue on in the playlist and check out all the other videos that I've made on this new game. But without any further ado, I think I'm gonna wind things down here. So if you guys did enjoy, please leave a like, leave a comment, help support the dream by smashing that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Peace.